Hi, everybody, and we are excited to see you and welcome to this week's version of the Writers Chat. This is where we like to gather together as writers, talk about all things writing, about writing, and for writers and by writers. So we're really glad to see you here. We got a lot of our good cohorts in the chat today. We have one of our own presenting today, and I'm excited about that. And we just thank you if you're taking the time to watch the replay, because it's so important for us to continue to grow as writers. And that is what, so welcome everybody. And that's one thing we are doing today. We're doing part 3 of a 3-part series. We did a before you go to a writers conference. We gave a lot of tips there. Then we did while you were at the writers conference. We did it, was that just last week? I think that was just last week. Yeah, and now today we're going to talk about after the writers conference, things to think about following up and what to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Bethany and have Bethany's taken the lead today, and then we'll invite people back in for some discussion in a little bit. So Bethany, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
So excited to talk about post-conference. So I'm excited to be here again and love Writers Chat. For those of you who don't know me, I am the co-owner of Serious Writer along with my literary agent, Kyle Young, and really just love to kind of invest and dig into the latest in the industry for what's going on with writers and how to keep up with the dreaded marketing, which is my favorite thing. And we've run several conferences over the last few years. And so as an attendee and a faculty member and now conference director, I hope to just give you some encouragement. And I told my mom, Johnny Alexander, I was like, I'm not sure people are going to like what I have to say because you're so overwhelmed when you get to the conference and at the conference. And I think you need to stay overwhelmed for the next 30 days. So that's not something people want to hear. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go through some slides and then we'll open up to discussion if that sounds great. All right. So after the conference, I really, truly believe that you need to maximize that first 30 days. And I am saying that from experience. And I'm gonna go on and off slides. So we're gonna jump around just a little bit. From experience, my very first conference, everyone left me. My very first conference, I was a youth minister's wife, and I was a high school cheerleading coach. I worked with teenage girls and boys too, but that was really more my husband, and didn't have platform. It wasn't something I was ever considering or thinking about, and just kind of had this idea for a book I wanted to write for the girls who were graduating from my high school. That was it. And so when I went to my first conference, it was a game changer. Had some interest from agents and editors and had to go back. And all of a sudden, if you've ever been, especially your first writers conference, you go thinking, I'm just going to go write and it's going to be wonderful. And I get to be a writer and do writerly things. And then they give you this massive list of things to do that you have no idea about if you're not already in that business world or that tech world. Is a website. Why do I need a website? What's an email list? That is the one thing I wish I had done earlier. I will tell you, that is not a regret, but I wish I had started. So as a youth minister's wife with very little platform, because everybody has platform, which is basically your reach. You have one, it might be small. One editor at that conference told me no. I had several ask for things. One said no, spent a little bit of time with me. I signed a contract with an agent. The editor who told me no at the conference is the one who bought the book 3 months after that conference. And it was specifically, he told my agent at the time, it was because of the marketing section. And I'm talking, in 1 month, I had built enough to get a book deal. It was a smaller press, but I learned so many lessons as a result of that. So that's where I'm coming from as I go into these next 4 or 5 things as someone who's been there. And so I'm really excited about the discussion that's going to follow. So now I will get off and I will go back to my slides and everybody can go off camera if you want to. Okay, so after the conference, those first 30 days, rest and prep. So I saw Rhonda in the chat said sleep for a week after the conference, sleep for a day or less. That's my tip. But you do need to rest. And I was glad Rhonda said that in there because here's the thing. This is what I learned and what I see writers learn. And I always think this is probably the best advice. You're about to jump back into family life for most of us, it's with people who don't understand everything that you just learned at that conference. And so at my first conference, I realized there was this entire world of understanding of things that I was learning, of industry things that nobody else, with the exception of my mom, who thankfully is a novelist, understood. And so I would explain things, but the excitement was temporary, like, oh, this happened and they're excited for you, but like, that's it. There's that understanding of what that really means or what that's going to do for your future. It just wasn't there. And so I've said before in here that I didn't want to go to the conference to make friends, because I wasn't like, just, like just gonna, I'm like, okay, it's not really, wasn't like a motivator for me. But then I realized how important it actually was, because the people you meet at the conference, and we've said this in the last 2 parts of the series, is to make friends with people who you're sitting with. That cannot be more important, because they are the only people who are going to understand what you're going through as you all kind of debrief after this conference and then try to get back into family life. So I call it download your brain. Whatever you can do to give yourself some time between conference and heading home. Sometimes that is the car ride. Sometimes it is a 45 minutes of, this is all I have to myself before I have to go be mom or wife or whatever roles you're wearing in your regular day-to-day life. And someone said they don't have recovery time. If you can't build it in, if you can build it in, build it in. If you can't, like I said, sometimes it's the car ride home. You need to be able to connect, share, and vent. So when you're in your rooms at night at the conference, get on Facebook, connect with the people that you met that day. The chance of you going back through your business card stack after the conference is very low. So every day that just becomes a one last thing. When you're in bed, grab the business cards and start connecting with people you wanted to connect with on Facebook, because you're going to lose the business card. You can throw it away, but you can, then now you're connected on there. Connect, share, vent, do what you got to do. And then I call it jump back in your life and go. It took me several years to realize the best way to do re-entry with my family was to let go of everything that had just happened at the conference or the event and 100% put back on the hat of mom, the hat of, taking the kids to school, getting back in the swing thing of, of lunches or whatever it is, because they've missed you and for guys too. So this is not just women, but whatever your family needs, you've been gone. And from their perspective, this is taking you away. And so anything that you can do to make them see like, okay, it was great that I'm gone, but you know what? Now I'm all yours. That has been the best, because at least in my family, after a few hours, they don't need to talk to me anymore. So I then have some downtime from them, but I have to give them that first when you get there. Second step is build your foundation. And this is going to look different for everybody depending on where you're at when in your career when you go to the conference. So if you were new, like I was at my first one, I didn't have any of these things. And so I there's so much I could have put here, but I just limited it to 3, because even if you already have some of these things established, then you need to go back in and say, okay, is it actually done? So obviously a website. Before your book comes out, you need a website. I still hear so many writers say, I don't have a book out, I don't need a website. And that's the opposite. You need a website to build your audience and then sell your book. It's easier that way. An email list, please start an email list, even if it's just asking for subscribers on the front page of your website, or doing a very simple PDF download that you can give away, which is called a lead magnet. The thing is, my very first book was for teenage girls. So the audience we were marketing to is moms. I just released a book for boys of the same age group. I don't have an email list from the first buyers of the Cinderella Rule. I can't tell you what I would give to know who had bought that book 8 years ago. I don't have them. I didn't grow them for the last 8 years. And so that is the one thing I wish I had done earlier, but it was daunting. I was literally, and this is what I'm going to suggest to you. If you don't know how to build a website, you get online and you Google or DuckDuckGo, whichever one you're doing now, and figure out like, how do I start a website? And I literally spent a Saturday and had one part of my screen, because I was just on my laptop, one part of my screen was a tutorial and the other part of my screen I was trying to figure it out. And it was frustrating because I didn't understand a lot of the terms, but I learned a lot, just enough to get through to the next step. And that's really all you got to do. You don't have to become an expert in these things, but you just got to get it done to the point where you can then move on, because you can always come back and build that foundation up. So if you're not new and you're coming and you need to build your foundation on your website, if you've already got one established, start creating some resource pages and some very dense content that people can find on your website. You don't have to blog all the time, but you should have some content that can lead people to you. For your email list, if you've already got it established, go look at your analytics. And if you're not getting the open rates that you want or the clicks that you're looking for or needing, then you need to learn how to build a better funnel. And so that's going to be your next foundation step. And then social media presence. If you're new, go ahead and take your username on all of them, get started, at least build a few posts on each of them so they don't look super brand new. For Instagram, I say get at least 12 posts up pretty quickly if you're just starting, because then most people don't really scroll through your feed, but then at least you've got a little bit of a scroll. Pinterest, get maybe 5 to 7 boards and put 5 to 6 pins in them, and that's 35 pins. So it's not a lot, but at least it shows that you've got the presence there. And then if you're not new and you already have a social media presence, then you need to dig in and figure out, this is what I taught. I taught for Del Didway, who's a literary agent and an amazing nonfiction author. I taught for him last night in the club's nonfiction craft training about this. And I taught about research methods for your nonfiction, which is really your first step. And then it was just kind of like all that. I forgot the name of the second one. I had mentor, influencer, research, something was the title. And it was about finding out who your influencers are in your space and paying attention to what they're doing, but what platforms they're using. Because at least for me, I'll use mine as an example. In the planner community, the majority of the planner influencers use Instagram and YouTube. So if I'm thinking, if I really want to reach this community, maybe I should go on Pinterest. Well, maybe, but Instagram and YouTube are overall the two platforms. So I don't need to spend as much time on the other ones. And so while it's good to have a presence, by looking at the influencers in your space or who also write in your genre and figuring out where they're spending their time and where their audience is engaging with them, you can eliminate a lot of content that goes out on platforms that your audience isn't going to find you on. So anyway, I don't want to go too deep into that. But anyway, build your foundation, whether you're new or you're already kind of seasoned. There's things that you can do when you get back to kind of give an update and a refresh. So the next thing is start your research. And it kind of goes what I was talking about is who is your competition? But competition sometimes is not a very fun word. So who are your future colleagues? A lot of them you probably met at the conference, people who are working in your space or writing in your space, people that you can connect with. This is one of the things that got me the yes from the editor that said no in the marketing section. I started Googling websites for parents of teens or, teen Christian teen dating sites. And I found a few online spaces that were already presenting articles to parents, and families would subscribe, and they had a lot of different topics. And so I just started pitching myself, and if you've just left a writer's conference, that is your opening line. It puts you ahead of everyone else who's also pitching them or trying to submit to them, because it shows that you have invested in your career, you're serious about writing, and not a lot of people probably have been to a conference. And so I just think anytime you can leverage something, it's a really great thing. And so that 30 days after the first conference, you get to say, I just got home from a writer's conference, and then pitch yourself. Beyond that, podcasts, I would definitely, especially now, it wasn't so much the thing when I got started, but podcasts, what podcast can you pitch, and the sites, who can you write for? So because I started getting some publication credits, which is what it's called when you start writing for people, that added to my platform. And like I said, I didn't really have one in my proposal, but just writing for a few of them built it to the point where the publisher thought, okay, we could probably sell this. And then the very last thing, and then we're going to open to discussion, is get to work. And so I call it the in-betweens, which is really kind of building time into your schedule and looking for the moments when you're never really not doing anything, because when you're not doing something, you might be resting. So there's intentional rest that needs to happen. It took me a long time to be okay with that or give myself permission to rest. So you need to protect that time. But I also think that needs to be balanced with, there are seasons where you're more tired, that you're up later, you're up earlier, and you say no to things. And I said no to a lot of things. And then people stop asking you to go to things. So that'll either make you very excited if you're introverted and don't want to go anywhere, or it might make you very sad. So you have to balance still meeting with friends and things too. But saying no during the season can be an important discipline. And I think too, finding how far you can stretch yourself without going crazy is something a lot of us don't do. And so if you can just think, okay, this is a season, give yourself a 30-day deadline, which is why I put the 30-day deadline on there. And then these things, develop the student mentality, figure it out. Like, especially now, there are courses and so much stuff online, especially for free, that you can figure out pretty much anything that you need to figure out just by some Google searches or knowing who knows the information and then just reading through their stuff. You might have to pay for a course or two. Can't tell you how many courses I bought over the last like 8 years. That some of them I went through all the way and some of them I didn't, but I had access to the information I needed, and every single one of them pushed me further. And because it made me feel like I was connected to people when I wasn't at a conference, that really helped as well. Dual screen, just what I mean by that is, have YouTube playing on one side of your computer and then figure it out while you're going step by step. It's the best way to learn. And then, and pitch. And so especially if someone's asked you at a conference for something, get your stuff updated and send it in. And then while you're waiting, because it can be 4 to 6 months sometimes to hear back from an agent or a publishing house or whoever you're sending it to, start pitching yourself to other places to build those publication credits. And building time into your schedule, I mean, that's really hard to do. And that's where those in-betweens are going to matter. So if you're sometimes making dinner, you can be on, depending on when you need to have the quality family time and when you're with your family, but no one's really actually needing you, it's kind of learning to separate those two things. You can do a lot while macaroni and cheese is boiling on the stove. And so many of us multitask anyway, but sometimes just, you can get a lot done in 3 minutes, in 3-minute batches, I will say. So give yourself grace, but don't lose the momentum that you got at the writers conference. Let it propel you into this next month. And if you know that you're going to a conference, you've got plenty of lead time, then try to build some time into your schedule before then. So that is it. And I will stop share, and I welcome all of you to come back on.
Woo. Woo. I feel like I drank from a fire hose, like Rhonda said earlier on that. Bethany, can you give us some insight on self-imposed deadlines? I know a couple people have said over the course when we've talked about goals and stuff, I think sometimes we're great if somebody else says, hey, you got to have this done by March 1st. But the rest of us, I don't know, when you tell yourself 30 days or tell yourself by June, I'm going to submit this.
Right.
I do okay part of the time, but I'll be honest, and I think a lot of us struggle with sometimes those self-imposed deadlines. So I don't know if it'd be worth having a discussion on those a little bit.
So totally agree. And I can't remember which influencer it was probably 6 or 7 years ago. It may have been Brian Harris, who I love, videofruit.org, I think is his website, but he does email marketing, or he used to, and brilliant, learned a lot from him. So plug for Brian Harris, BRYAN, I think it was him. And he was talking about this same thing. And what he said is put your money where your mouth is. And I actually had to do this once. So I've done this, but you publicly make a bet with somebody and you put money on the line. And so now all of a sudden you are accountable to someone. And I promise you, if the dollar amount is right, you will get it done by that time. And one time I was afraid it was the same thing. Like, I didn't really have to have it done, but I wanted to have it done. And so I'm just my husband, or if I thought maybe I would do my husband because then the money stayed in the family. But I think he said, put $100, don't do less than that, because you're going to not be motivated for much more than that. I'm like, well, I don't really have $100 at this point in my life to give to somebody just because I missed my own deadline. But and you put it on Facebook and you tag the person and you say, hey, this is what I need to have done. And you spell it out. And if it's not done by this date at this time, I'm publicly giving you this money, you will get it done. I promise you. So if you even have to go to that level to have a self-imposed deadline, do it, because it works.
I love it.
People say make that bet with somebody to give to a cause that you don't support.
Oh.
And if you do it with another writer, so you kind of do it like, you both have to do it, or you're giving money to something that normally you would never give money to. And that's a great incentive then for making sure you do whatever you were supposed to do.
It has to be painful enough to where and the public part of it is important too, right? Because because sometimes the person, you'll have people like checking in on you. Like, did you do it?
I know on the book that I'm writing right now, I think one of the key things I did was to ask, about a group of maybe 15 people to be prayer partners.
Mhm.
And so then I have felt an obligation that every 3-4 months send them an update. And of course it hit a wall there for a while, but having that group praying for you has helped me also, because that's almost having an accountability group,
Yeah.
Yeah, they, I said, this is what the next step is. So something about the power of writing it too,
Yeah.
writing it out, that this is the next step.
Yeah.
And sharing it, becomes accountable. I don't know if anybody else has other ideas on deadlines. I think it's a struggle.
I was gonna say, I actually requested of my newsletter followers to keep me accountable and told them what I was gonna do. So that's one idea too, if you have some newsletter followers who are willing to do that for you.
It is. On that. Brandy, were you going to say something? Share something? No. Okay. I noticed Carissa, I think it was, who said, where was her question, that the newsletter and the building the email list has her absolutely frozen. And with that, when you were talking about web pages, that was a series of comments that went in the chat, Bethany, was that people were saying they come back, they've got the web page, but then they get so overwhelmed about updating it and keeping it updated. And I think that's sort of along the line of, how do we get started on this overwhelming stuff?
There's really only 4 pages. Oh, sorry.
When we're tired on top of it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, looking back at that first conference, and really this whole thing is kind of built on what I did, not realizing I was doing something that I would ever teach about later. I was just so excited and motivated. I wanted to quit my job. And like writing obviously wasn't going to replace that income, but I wanted to be back home, and I was just doing this temporary work. And so I had a motivation to make this happen. And I did quit my job. But I gave my notice when I got home from the conference. So I thought, this is it. So I was going all in. So there's really only 4 website pages there's only four pages on your website is really the proper way to say that you need. They're called the 4 most important pages with a bonus 5th. And so I'll just go ahead and get that on the replay now. Your home page is the most important. You have 2 options. It can be a static page, which means there's a lot of information on that home page that you can scroll through. Or it can be the blog is on the front page, either way. So if you're regularly blogging, that might be a good option for you. If you're not, then make it a static page. Or if you have multiple things that people are coming to your website for, sometimes a static page is easier because you can direct people to those things. So the homepage is number 1. Number 2 is the about page. It's also one of the most clicked pages. So get your bio up there, talk to your reader there, let them know what they're going to be getting from you. 3 is contact. That's an easy page. There's so many free plugins to do contact forms for. Just give them a way they can get in touch with you. Put your social media, of course, on the website. And then the 4th one is the blog. And so blogging is different now than it is or was back then, but this is basically, I think of them as articles. What articles are you writing for your website? And that's where you would put like resource pages. They could be actual pages or they could be posts. Posts is the blog. So if you have a static page on your website, then your blog is going to be at the top menu bar. Otherwise it's just going to be on the homepage. So you only need 4. And if you're not really blogging yet, you only have 3. So home, about, and contact, get them set up. I like the Divi theme for WordPress.org a lot. It's so many tutorials. It's very easy to figure out. It's pretty much drag and drop. You can build it in real time. And that's the one I'm using. And after using several, love this one. It's Divi. It's one of the top rated ones.
I use that one too. And I find it's helpful when I'm using it consistently. If I haven't used it in a while, then it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot completely how to do this. But when you're using it, and it really is a good thing to use. And we've had other people suggest other things too. They're not coming to me.
Elementor is a competitor for Divi.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there are some things out there. Rhonda, I think
Can't hear you.
On my blog at writerslifehacks.com, I wrote a blog recently on whether you should write a blog or a newsletter. What's the difference? And, if you're wanting to build your email list, a newsletter is a better investment of time, in my opinion. But I've also used my blog content in a newsletter, because the newsletter actually lands in their email box, where a blog, you might send them an email, hey, I posted a new blog. They've got to click on it to get to it, the content. Mm-hmm. So what I'm changing my strategy a little bit right now, because I'm trying to grow my email list, to do a newsletter instead of just posting on my blog.
Mm-hmm. I saw that. That was really good. And I did click through to finish reading the article on your blog after.
Thank you.
Newsletter.
I'll put the link here in case anybody wants to look at it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I will say Rhonda's got her Writing Hacks newsletter is so worth subscribing to. It's really, really, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I could go back to the website, Bethany, how I kind of started was in a community of people that I know. I just began to talk about how I wanted to have one, but didn't know really where to start. And someone that I know said, hey, let's have a conversation. Let me help you. And so my website is obviously up, but I am actually going today after we meet, because my March newsletter went out this morning. I said to her, show me how to put it up so that I can learn a step. Mm-hmm. And so I'm learning in increments how to handle my website. And I think that is a little less daunting than for me, it was to just jump in and try to learn all these new things all at once.
Yep. You have to go step by step. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think that, I think it's important because I have a resource page, which I've talked about, where I am providing, other things for people that come there. Right. And I'm trying to learn to kind of expand on that a little bit more as well. So I think it's helpful to help promote other things as well on your website.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that.
Bethany, I'd kind of like to shift things back a little bit to after the conference. So once upon a time, it was a good idea to send editors and agents, people you met with at a conference, a thank you note afterwards. How is that today? Mm-hmm. Is that still a good idea, or is that considered cluttering an email box?
Okay, I've heard it both ways. I think it depends on the agent or the editor. Some of them hate it because they're like, who's teaching this? And I'm teaching because that's actually how I got in touch with the editor, who said, no, I just sent him a thanking him for his time because he took extra time with me, and I let him know that I had gotten an agent. He said, send me the proposal. I was like, okay, so that we did. And he said, yes, and they bought it. So it was like, oh, that worked. But I didn't know that was was going to happen. So I think it depends. I will tell you the best thing to do, probably the best practice. I wouldn't clutter the email up with it. I've seen people bring thank you cards to conferences so they can write notes that day or give them. And when I'm on faculty, I can't tell you, like, you're always stressed because you're hoping you're doing a good job, and you're needed, and you're running everywhere, and you're tired, just like everyone, you're tired and you haven't eaten probably because you've talked the whole meal. So when someone gives you a card, it's like the best thing ever. And I keep all of them. And I'm guaranteeing probably a lot of faculty members do too, because they're small and tangible. Emails get lost. So if you want to do thank yous, I would bring thank you cards with you and slide it in their bag, or that means so much. I can't tell you the value of that thank you card.
And I think naming specifically what they did too, because that helps reinforce that connection with them. That you said it, Bethany, that you really spent some extra time with me, and I so appreciated that, and that was encouraging. So just something simple like that, acknowledging that.
At our Mid-South conference, we have a box of cards that people can then write. We give it to one, and they can put them in a basket, and we have someone who will make sure the faculty get those. So that can
that's a great idea.
Yeah, it really is great. And remember the directors too. So I mean, and I'm not speaking from a director experience, but just there's always the calmer they look on the surface. It's like a duck, right? Those feet are paddling in the background. There's always something that has gone on, or they're worried about or thinking about. So I need to be better about that myself, but just remembering the directors and the staff who are running around.
Yeah.
I think the little handwritten note is awesome in this day and time. because
Yeah.
people don't do snail mail or hand you a card very often anymore. And like you said, you kept them.
Yeah.
And that means you can go back, like maybe a year from now, you're having a rough day. That can help pull you back up and help you move forward again. So I think that's something we need to get back to.
Great.
So,
It reinforces that person in your mind too, I'll say, because you've had this extra connection with them that you weren't expecting.
right.
Because
Mhm.
you go to, especially faculty, you're going there to give. I mean, that's your whole thing. Like, you're hoping God's going to do something for you in your career too, if you're on the writer side, because
Mhm.
usually there's not, how do I say this? A lot of conferences don't have a lot of built-in time for authors on faculty specifically to meet with agents and editors. So you're also there, right? You know, you're a writer too and have met these connections, but you're not there for that. And so you go in knowing, like, hoping that you'll have a chance to talk to somebody, but for the most part, you're just there to pour out. And so when someone does something so special like that, it does, like, oh, you know, thank you. So
I think
Now
Pam
there's,
say something.
Oh. yeah,
Pam, did you have your hand up earlier? Oh, okay. You're muted.
I was just jumping in on the website thing with the pages. I have way more for only because of what I do. But I have a news page. I like news, and I change that. That's something I change on a regular basis besides my blogs. So
that's really cool.
That's good.
and it's kind of like, I feel like that's my newsletter. But the thing is, how do I get people to come to my news page, friend? So I'm going to work on learning the newsletter, build the email list and all. I've been putting it off for way too long as well.
One thing you could do, and anybody can do really, is pull some of the content from past newsletters and just throw them into like social media graphics as text mostly. And then let them know that this is like a daily thing or a weekly thing they get out. So you're spitting out a ton of value there, because that could, like, oh, I want more of that. There's a couple of newsletters I subscribe to for that reason, is because if I've missed it, I know I can go find it online too, on their social.
now there's something that's really important to do after a writers conference that I haven't heard you mention yet. And that's make sure that you send out those requested materials.
Yeah.
Because I think you mentioned last week that, or in passing, we discussed it briefly somewhere, that too many writers have requested material. They get requested
Right.
material and then they go back and then they don't send it in.
Yeah,
You
I
want to
think
talk about that a little bit?
I think I went too fast because I think I said it in the pitch area, but I didn't really like talk about it too much. So it's an overwhelming number of agents and editors that I've just talked to in my experience have said that they'll request material or items or proposals or fools and they never see them. So I'm guilty of
So
this.
what is it? So what is a good time frame?
Yes.
If you have a requested material, how quickly should you get it out? I mean, what is a general accepted time frame between the conference and when you want to send it out? What is the expectation from editors and agents and publishers?
I would say I would have it in their hands, ideally 2 to 3 weeks in that first 30 days that you've connected. Because, and here's why I'm saying this. Now, there's going to be 5 million exceptions to this, but so just as the general best practice, typically when they've asked for something, here's what you don't know. You don't know a lot. They know, and we don't. So they might know that a specific publishing house is looking for this, and they are going to editorial board or pub board next week, or in a month, or in 2 months, and they want to bring this in, or they want to submit it to them for that specific board, but then you send it in three months, you've missed your window. You don't know the window. That's the hard thing.
Yeah.
And so sending it in the night, here's what you don't want. I will say this, here's another best practice. Don't send things in like during the conference, unless they've specifically asked you, because the only emails they're checking, they're just trying to catch up on work. It's going to get buried. And so give them a chance to go home and breathe too, just the same way you're going to go home and breathe a little bit and then do that follow-up. And I would get it done. Like I'm saying, those first 30 days, get it done.
Yeah.
It is work time. And depending on how it also, I think, goes back to motivation too. Like it depends on where you're at in it's motivation depending on where you're at in your career. So as writers, we come in anywhere from, I just write for myself, or it's a hobby, I write for my family, which is all fine, to I'm going to quit my job and I'm going all in. I mean, we all kind of fall somewhere on that spectrum. And so how motivated you are is going to determine how much effort you put into those first 30 days, I think.
Yeah.
So then is it fair to say that if you don't think that you can get your work out within the first 30 days, then maybe you shouldn't pitch it?
Nope, you should definitely pitch it. And then I would
Okay.
have that conversation during that pitch session. So for nonfiction, if the proposal's not done, if they ask because they want to see a proposal, when would you like to have this in your inbox? This is a business, like you are in business mode. So when is the best time for me to send this to you? Or if you're working on for fiction, you probably should have it done. Or if it's not done, you're having that conversation, they know it's not done. For nonfiction though, it's 4 weeks, fine, whatever it is that you're having that conversation about, but then get it to them, because that gives them the opportunity to say, oh no, that's fine. A lot of what they'll probably say is, oh no, that's fine, because they've got other things that they're lining up. They might be looking at your project thinking, okay, I'm going to send this out knowing that it's not going to get picked up for what is this 2024 release. So there's not a rush. But again, that's the things that we don't know. So like that's a good question to ask, is when is the best time for me to have this in your inbox?
And you mentioned last week about concept papers. So it is possible. I see Rhonda's comment earlier about she tries to pitch something. She tries not to pitch something she's not ready. But if we had a concept paper and they jumped on one of those ideas, wow, that puts it right in the front burner. And you need to have that conversation, because to me, if I presented my concept paper, they know it's a concept.
Exactly.
But they'd say, what kind of deadline are you looking for? Is this a short deadline, or do I have a little bit of time to develop this more? And it might depend if it's a book or an article too,
or a picture book versus like devotional. They know timelines that we don't. And so that those are good questions to ask too. And on the concept thing, you know what your internal deadline is to get this to them. And also, this is a lot of, are you going to be easy to work with? A lot of that happens over these next few interactions, particularly if it's with an agent, because you deal more with your agent than you do with the different publishing houses. And so it's like what we were talking about, like being on your best behavior. I've seen more than one book deal not go through because of bad behavior. So, they're watching to see how you're going to be and how you're going to represent them too. Like you're watching them to see if they're going to be good for you. They're also watching you.
I think sometimes if you have that discussion, besides helping to sell yourself, is what you're saying, it also shows you've got a certain professional level that you can work, because you are aware that they also have deadlines.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
100%.
Also another tip after the deadline, and a lot of times they will tell you that, is I've learned to ask, where specifically do you want me to send it to? Because often they've got a separate email. They'll hand you a card and say, send it to this email. And often they will say, but I've learned that if you put in the subject thing, requested material from Serious Writers, South Carolina, or whatever it is, because that gets it to them.
They a lot of times, and exactly like that, they'll tell you to put something in the subject line, because then either them or they'll have their assistant do it. Then they'll just do a search, and then it pulls you to the front of that line. Well, that's not going to last forever. So again, that's another reason why. And if you don't have a way to get that proposal in, or if you didn't ask the question ahead of time, then that could be a follow-up. But it's always, I met you at here, we had a great conversation, something we talked about, remind them who you are. And then you can ask. But I really recommend limiting the amount of emails that you're sending to an agent, because they just get so many, and at some point they don't want to answer you anymore, and they're not going to. So I've heard agents say that usually one reason why you don't get responses back, because that's a hard thing, is not knowing or not getting responses, or not knowing why you were rejected, is because of the nasty responses they get when they send those emails. And so they just don't. So you get the very generic letter, and then they don't respond to you anymore. It's because so many people are really nasty.
Their ideas, tips ideas. Johnny, you had something you want to add at all to after the?
I did. I kind of wanted to go back to Carissa's newsletter because I remember how daunting that was for me and how I put off doing it. And I don't know that Carissa is still on here, but maybe she'll listen to the replay. And I put it off way too long too. I should have had that thing going, yes, very, very early. But when it was finally just sitting down and I tried with, I will just say with MailChimp and hated it. But when I got on MailerLite and it was much easier for me to use and then just figured out my format. And I think that's the key. Thank you, Rhonda. Figuring out the format, what is going to be consistent in my newsletter. And it doesn't have to be long. I mean, mine is actually probably way too long, but it's consistent. And
Chris is on.
yeah, so you do that personal thing. I do my giveaway. I do other stuff. I do another giveaway. I promote other people's books. And I think that's what you need to do. And it's okay if you start out with just one subscriber. Nobody knows.
Yes, right.
Yeah. 100% open rate.
Yes.
I will say too, brand yourself. Have something that's consistent from letter to letter.
Mhm.
Colors, an image, a header, a logo, something visual, because newsletter is a visual medium and you've got to make it attractive. And one of the things I love, there are so many templates out there you can hardly miss.
Yep.
All you got to do is open up a template and fill in the blanks, right? So it's not that hard, but do be sure you brand so that people know it's you when they open it.
Yeah.
I got a newsletter yesterday in the email and I glanced at it, just seeing it. And I started to delete it. And I thought, why did that appeal to me? And it made me step back and look at it as a writer. What was it? There was something in that newsletter that drew me a little bit further. And Rhonda, part of it was the colors because it matched my brand colors. And I knew I caught that. And so then I thought, oh, okay, I got to study this newsletter to see how she set it up and who she set it up with and what was her format, because there was something there that attracted me. And that gave me an idea for mine then. And so I think that's an idea somehow to get started is looking at some other newsletters and ask yourself that question too.
And I give mine a title. Oh, go ahead, Jean.
No, I was just going to say, then there's the great title, Chris. I got it. You know this. How do you eat an elephant?
Yes.
One bite at a time. You just say, okay, this is the new month of March. We're first month. By the end of this March, I'll have 2 things done on my newsletter. What were those 2 things? And just set yourself a goal and do it. I'm sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I try to make my subject title very intriguing too. And sometimes it can be kind of long, but I think that's become part of my thing, but just try to make it, it's not like, here's my February newsletter, it'll be a play on words, or it'll be, I think one of them was my something adventure or whatever. I mean, just, something about the dogs, who knows, but I don't remember off the top of my head any of them, but I do try to make a title so that people will get kind of used to that and they want to open it. Pam said she's been told she's been done too many giveaways or make other authors look bad. It's like, who's telling you that? if your subscribers like it, do it.
Right.
I do 2 giveaways in every newsletter.
I don't have a newsletter yet. It's like, but I'm thinking, what do you give away if you sign up for a newsletter? I get that. But things like book swag, price for party specials, I put on my newsletter. If you buy this, you get that and everything. And a couple of people have said to me, you're making us look bad. I'm like, well, because I'm generous. It doesn't cost a lot of money to find awesome stuff to give away for your book at like thrift stores and Oriental Trading. And I do tons of giveaways and haven't done it lately because people.
Are the giveaways working for you? Are you seeing a return?
Nope.
So that's really the big question. Like, I will say King Sumo, Buzz Sumo is great. Rafflecopter is good too, but the Buzz Sumo, King Sumo are great for giveaways. Okay. I'm glad I get to leave in like 1 minute after I say this.
I know. You gotta go. 1 minute.
Here's the thing. Especially in the Christian writing market, And I found myself self-censoring a little bit even in my thing, because the word competition, people don't like it, especially here. Now in general market, it's not a thing, but Christian market seems to be. So like colleagues was a better word. But here's, you don't get bonus points for being new. Like no one is giving you extra space at the bookstore. Publishers, you know, might be willing to take a chance on debut because they hope that you'll be a bestseller, but it's really about them and their bottom line, not really about you. And I think we have to remember too, that again, depending on your goals for writing, where you're going to fall on that scale, this won't matter for one half and it will matter for the other half, but your competition are the bestsellers that are out there. Like you don't get a pass, you know, just because you've got one book out and it's sold 5,000 copies. Like you're competing against people who have sold millions. And so we have to remember that too. So when someone, anytime I hear authors or anybody really like, you make us look bad, I'm like, oh, really? I'm going to do it 3 more times just this week. So there we go. So I would have that motivate you and see, I would honestly, Pam, I'd be like, I'm going to get some really good analytics out of this one. And then I'm going to teach you how to do it. And you'll pay me for my course. Like, I don't know. That's where I go.
Okay. I have taught one workshop at small conference in Delaware, Southern Delaware, about, you know, how to, you know, do a party, but how to figure out what your book swag should be other than stickers and bookmarks, which, you know, and temporary tattoos, which I have, and coloring pages and all. Because when you write for kids, your book swag can go as far as your imagination. And, you know, so yeah, I wouldn't pull back on it just because I make people look bad, but I'm like, y'all what parties are you attending? Because I've won some really good prizes at some of these, you know, so I don't know.
Step it up.
Yeah.
Since they have to leave, I want to say something real quick on the recording. Well, Johnny is still here before she clicks off.
I'll stay on.
Okay. Is that Johnny's our lead next week. And she's hosting us to bring in Jim Watkins, who's talking about writing humor. So that would be a real good follow-up, because what I'm catching is some of the chat is that besides giveaways, being entertaining and humorous in our newsletters is also good. It's probably good in all our writing. So Jim is just a wonderful
Brilliant.
So thank you for Johnny for being our lead next week on that. And I think that'll be a really, really key one, and have fun. What Bethany? Got anything more?
I have one newsletter tip I can give. And then Brandy had mentioned something in the chat with me about recording. So then I can pitch it to her and jump off, because it was a really good point. I will tell you, when I was first getting started, and I didn't do a newsletter, but I was paying attention to people's newsletters that I had met at the conference. Going back to C. Murphy, I believe it was his. I think Twyla was his assistant.
Twyla?
Yes.
And I got his newsletter. I opened his newsletter every week because of one thing. They had a contest in the newsletter. It was like you had to be the first person to answer 3 questions. And it was like a $5 gift card or something. But the answers were sometimes on the website. Sometimes they were in the newsletter. And so I found myself going to his website, checking out something on Amazon for his books, reading through his entire newsletter so I could be one of the first ones. And then what I found myself doing was waiting for that newsletter. And the moment it came in, I opened it, because it was the competitive side of me. And I thought, this is genius. I am reading everything. I am going places. And now I understand it from the marketing perspective. But for $5, that type of lead going through and loyalty to a newsletter might be a good place to maybe start if you're getting started, and maybe just do it once a month, $5 once a month. But the more consistent you are, you'll get people like me who are like, I saw the newsletter come in. I'll stop everything and I have to do it right now. Which is what you want. So thank you for having me. This has been amazing. And I saved the chat.
Thank you.
You guys have been great.
Enjoy the movie and your last few hours with your mama.
I know.
Yes.
I know. We'll at least get to see her next week. It'll be like we're still together next week.
I know.
Yeah.
Physically, they won't be together. And it's always that's one thing neat about writers' conferences is, you know, because you get to physically see these writers and you develop a network or love for them totally different sometimes. And over the internet's good. I love all my internet friends, but still on that. So we've got about 5 minutes to do a wrap up, getting us back to conferences and stuff. Brandy, what you got?
Yes. One important feature of conferences is the recordings, especially with a lot that's happening online now for
Yep.
conferences instead of in person. You get the chance to watch recordings and take in a lot more than you normally would if you were there in person. And I think that's done a world of good for writers because they can just watch a lot of the things. But those recordings have a time limit. So
Right.
after the conference, it's really important to sit down, go through all the recordings for all the workshops and the presentations you want to watch, write notes, and put them in a conference folder with all your notes for all the workshops and all the presentations so that you have a nice reference to go back to later when the recordings are gone, because you really don't want to miss those recordings. You'd probably kick yourself if they got to whatever the end date of those recordings were and you didn't go back and watch them, because they're a huge resource and it really gives you your best amount of conference for the money that you paid. So make sure you
Yes.
get those recordings in after
Yeah.
the conference.
And lots of times there are handouts that you want to make sure you download and print and have
Yes.
all of that
yes.
information. That is something that I think is really important. And the only other thing that I would add about when I get back from a conference, is what usually virtual at this point in time, is I really try to decompress with God and not allow, because there's so much happening and you feel so much pressure. Oh, I have to do this or that.
Right.
But I think the most important thing is to really allow God to speak to you in what he wants your next steps to be.
I think that's really important because sometimes conferences change your trajectory from what you thought it was going to be.
Yes.
And so after the conference and that prayer time, that, evaluating with God prayerfully can really help you to figure out where you're going to go from there. And start mapping out your plan, which might be totally different. So excellent point.
Another thing would be to prioritize your list after you get back.
Right.
Yep.
What is the most important thing I get done first? And then you can move forward. And it's not quite as hard to move forward if you got an idea where you're headed.
Yeah. I generally make
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 things I write down that I'm looking to do, and maybe make a shorter list and then make a longer list of things to look at down the road, which doesn't make it all seem so overwhelming, which it very well can be.
That follows up well with Bethany's idea about 30 days. And I found myself thinking this morning, I listened to Emily P. Freeman's podcast every Tuesday. She just words of wisdom every Tuesday, if you don't listen to that. And she talked about springtime. And I started thinking, to me, spring, it starts March 1st. Meteorologists, the weather people will tell you that. So I'm into spring mode. I thought March, April, May. And I had very distinct things I wanted to accomplish in each of those months. They really divided unbelievably well. And I think that was a God thing. Like Joe said, because I was praying while I do it, I really thought that, okay, in the month of March, this is my goal. In the month of April, this is my goal. In the month of May, this will be my goal. And they're empowering. They're kind of fun. And and they're reasonable. They're doable. And I thought, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So I think that's the follow-up. And those are my priorities, Jan. Be my priorities for each month. And keep it simple. I think that helps reduce the overwhelming, that I'm going to do 1 or 2 things. And I love it that Carissa, I don't know if you guys caught it in the chat. She made us her accountability group. She's going to get something done this week. On that way and stuff. Rhonda, you going to Blue Ridge? When is Blue Ridge? May?
I just decided, it's the last day of May. It's over Memorial Day.
Okay.
Monday. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah.
It's late this year then.
It is late. It's a week later than I expected it to be, but I did finally just decide I made enough money to go. I had a goal of how much money I had to make with my business, and if I got there, I'd go. So I am going. Is anybody else going?
I want to. I say every year, I want to go to Blue Ridge, and I haven't made it yet. I'm on faculty for Colorado, but that's online, so that doesn't.
Yeah,
but
I
just. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought I might see Miss Rachel there. That's the first and only time I've ever seen her was at Blue Ridge.
Going.
Yeah.
I wish I could too, Melissa. Yeah, on that way. I haven't found the right writers conference this year. I may be all
Yeah.
online, Brandy, and
Yeah.
that worked. That
Mhm.
has both its benefits and its negatives, on
Yeah.
that be
Yep.
all online and stuff.
Well, some
Yeah.
conferences are just hybrid now.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Realmakers is both online and in person this year.
Yeah.
So
it's
that's
your
July.
okay. It's your learning style, but
Mhm.
you got to be pretty doggone self-motivated to do
Mhm.
all online all the time.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, the Kentucky Christian Writers Conference is the third week of June in Elizabethtown, and it's going to be live in person.
All right.
So if anyone is looking for an in-person conference, that's a great one to go to.
We're getting there, aren't we? We're getting back. Well, you guys, it's noon in Ohio, so noon in Eastern.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap up the recording. We'll invite you to stay to the after party. Brandy, anything in concluding? Jan, Melissa, anything in concluding?
No, I think this has been a really great series on conferences in general. And I think it'll be a good resource for years to come as well.
I think it will too. I would too. And it's always a joy to have Bethany join us and stuff. She's got such knowledge and experience and wisdom to share
Yeah.
with us. So I always like it when she can hop on and stuff. And we're excited about next week, so we can do some laughter. Jim Watkins is wonderful. If you've not heard him before, but talk about exploring writing, humor writing, and putting it into our writing. So I'm excited about that. So thank you for joining us today. And you're welcome to stay here for a few minutes afterwards, and we'll see you. Thank you for watching the replay, and thank you for being with us today. And we'll see you next week on Writers Chat. Bye now.